Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Phil Mackintosh, Chief Economist at Nasdaq, to discuss data, maps, and science all prove that masks work. And certainly not much of a surprise to us, Phil, as we discuss this all the time. But before we even take a look at some of that data, we have to drill down and understand what it means to the economy. And let's start with bankruptcies, because that's something we've been covering over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I think, at the top level, you can look at coronavirus cases every single day, and you kind of get the feeling the trends last longer than a single or second day. So we're looking now at some of the downstream implications of slowing down the economy. And obviously, when we have lockdowns, which we're starting to see again, the risk is more companies go broke. And so we talked yesterday about how there was definitely an increase in companies going broke. Today, we look at that in the perspective of the 2008 recession. And you can see it's not nearly as dramatic as the number of bankruptcies we saw back in 2008. But when you look at some other data that breaks down the bankruptcies by sector, you can see it's a really different recession this time than 12 years ago. So it's really affected a lot of the consumer discretionary, a lot of the bricks and mortar retail. It's affected a lot of energy companies, with the demand for oil still down about 10% globally. A lot of the pricing of oil has come down because there's just no demand for oil. So it's affecting totally different sectors. The financial sector has been relatively stable throughout all of this. And even real estate, kind of surprisingly, given all the bankruptcies in retail, real estate hasn't done too badly through this.
All right, so in our next chart here, we've been talking about election maps for quite some time. And quite frankly, in my preparation for our hit this morning, I just can't wrap my head around this. The map of the United States is very red, and not for good reasons.
Yeah, this is not an election map. This is actually looking at the heat map of COVID cases right now. But it does kind of speak to one of the things that we've talked about, that mask wearing is quite a partisan topic. And so a lot of the states that voted Republican have followed their leader and said, I don't need to wear masks. And they've actually got a pretty bad outbreak of coronavirus throughout most of their states already. There's other data you can look at that sort of shows that on a state-by-state basis, the states that do wear masks more often have much less frequency of coronavirus. And I guess the good news is, looking forward, it seems like more and more states are starting to weather or learn these lessons and implement statewide mask mandates. So we're getting closer to a national mask mandate, but it's all a little bit too late to stop the current increase. Looking at Europe, you can see definitely that the quarantining and the social distancing that they've implemented recently, and they're about 2 weeks ahead of us, is starting to work. So there's hope that if we can implement mask wearing and social distancing here, we can tackle coronavirus. We can keep the hospital intakes at more manageable levels, and hopefully save a lot of people from death before this vaccine actually gets through approval processes and distributed. We've got like a 6-month period to get through before the vaccine's really going to be widely available.
Right, and that is a concern. And while we do take a look at these maps and we see that masks work, at the end of the day, it's a shame. We're losing fellow Americans. We're putting an incredible amount of stress on the healthcare workers, on an already stressed system. So Phil, I guess, the next question is, this is a little bit more philosophical, if masks have been politicized, could the same thing follow suit with vaccinations? I understand that I don't understand the anti-vax argument, but that certainly is there. But could this potentially be the next mask politicization, right? If that was politicized, why wouldn't vaccines?
Sounds like another day for a whole lot more charts, but you're absolutely right. There's already data showing there's some partisanship to wanting to take a vaccine. And even since we've been talking about a vaccine, a lot of people have started to sort of back away from saying, yes, 100%, I'm going to get a vaccine and get back to normal life. And you're right, unless enough people take the vaccine, we won't have the herd immunity that means that we get rid of coronavirus completely. It'll always be a risk. And there'll always be people that won't be protected by a vaccine, and there'll be more people dying from it. And the risk that it mutates and forms another version of the virus that's just as deadly and goes through the economy again.
Oh, that's a lot to unwrap. Phil, thanks as always for joining us on Trade Talks.
You're welcome, Jill.
You got it. And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.